This is our presentation for the bike rental analysis for Info 3236. We are Group 40 miners, and we're going to start off by talking about a brief introduction of the bike rental business. So many successful bike rental companies target local landmarks and biking trails to maximize their profits. And the main source of revenue will come from the number of rentals per day. However, there is cost to consider, such as the initial startup cost of around $200 to $250 per bike. And the customers in this industry are constantly looking for good value, and cheaper is not always better. So customers are willing to pay a little extra for a valuable experience. So offering discounts for early booking and online booking are good ways to influence customers into making a purchase. So customers always want to get on the road as fast as possible. So making sure they don't have to wait in line is another consideration that must be made. So next, we're going to focus on some of the factors that influence demand for this industry.
Here we have the average square error of the decision tree. This is the larger of the two trees. The best tree that we found was whenever there was a demand type of high and the temperature, or the feels like temperature, was greater than 30 degrees Celsius. It also included having the time be in the afternoon or later, and the humidity being less than 44%. This also included workday, or it not being a workday. The least optimal tree was whenever we had a demand type of low, the time was in the morning, and it was either between the day of Saturday through Tuesday, or they didn't have a date. The temperature was less than 33 degrees or missing. Using this optimal tree, we've decided that the best thing to do is to promote rentals by offering discounts on Saturday through Tuesday in the morning when the temperature is low. The misclassification tree that we found was a very simple tree with just 2 leaves on it. This tree tells us when demand is high, there's an increase in demand, and when demand is low, there's decrease in demand. We can promote more rentals by offering discounts to riders when demand is low.
All right, so this is the cluster analysis that we ran on the data. So we chose a temp, which is feels like temperature. We chose the actual temperature, the wind speed, and the humidity for our interval variables in the cluster analysis. We chose these intervals because we felt that they had the greatest impact on demand when compared to the decision tree models that we previously discussed. And we decided to filter out casual and registered users because we already had the total count variable, so those two weren't necessary. And so for the clusters that were generated automatically, it had gave us 19 clusters, and we decided to narrow that down to only 6 clusters so we could get a better representation of our data. And then for segment 4, the A temp, temp, and humidity were above average, and the wind speed was below average. For segment 6, the A temp, temp, and wind speed were below average, and the humidity was above average. For segment 1, the A temp, temp, and humidity were below average, and the wind speed was above average. For segment 2, all of the interval variables were above average. There's a total of 19 segments that were generated automatically. The segment with the highest count was segment 16 with 488 and 8.97%. And we dropped 2 segments, which were segments 11 and 20, since they did not generate any data with the intervals that we selected. So for segments 2, 4, 6, and 16, we found those to be the most important segments to focus on when looking at the demand because they had the greatest influence. And these segments, the most important ones, combined to make up approximately 33.15% of the data.
Okay, for the visualizations, we decided to make some charts on Tableau. The first chart is the month of date time line chart. This line chart shows the quarterly ride counts for years 2015 and 2016. Using this, we can see how demand changes throughout the year. The next chart is an AM/PM bubble chart, and this bubble chart shows the relationship between AM/PM times, the total counts of bike rentals, and we noticed that the PM time bracket had a higher amount of bike rentals. So more people are out buying bikes in the PM. For the third chart, we did a seasonal tree map chart, and this tree map shows us total ride counts for each season. This allows us to view seasonal demands for bike rentals. This information is useful because it'll help management understand the seasons will require, which seasons will require the most resources. And the last chart is a day of the week continuous area chart. And this chart shows us the total number of rentals depending on the day of the week. This allows us to offer special promotions on days that typically have the lowest number of rentals.
After looking over the visualizations, we were able to come up with 2 business recommendations for the bike rental service. The first recommendation is to improve the rental application to include information about the weather. This will improve demand by targeting customer segments that focus on optimal weather when deciding whether or not they will rent a bike. This will also provide an increase in the quality of customer service, which will lead to an overall higher demand. We also recommend that the company modify maintenance schedules to work around peak demand times. This includes scheduling annual fleet maintenance to be in the spring when there is a low seasonal demand. We also recommend that daily maintenance should be performed during the morning hours to reduce unit downtime during peak demand, which is in the afternoon.